Hello, I'm Tom Bagamane, CEO and founder of The Giving Spirit, a Los Angeles-based nonprofit that has been in homeless services since 1999. We provide two points of interaction with our homeless community. One, providing survival assistance to the poorest of the poor directly where they stand in the form of survival kits that we build throughout the year. We have impacted over 80,000 individuals since 1999. The other half of our mission, in which I am so proud to be here today, is in education and community awareness, where we pierce the veil of homelessness through our curated programming, either live and produce content to allow parents, CEOs, folks that are on the fence to understand the true realities and the truth behind the lives that have become marginalized and politicized on our streets of Los Angeles. Today, I have the great privilege of introducing two amazing filmmakers, Pedro Cos, John Schenk, who have made a great film called Lead Me Home, which has been nominated for an Oscar this year. Guys, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so glad to be here with you this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, I have to tell you, I've watched your film twice, and it still gives me, it warms my heart. It gives me goosebumps, but it gives me strength. And knowing that we have two amazing warriors like yourselves that have brought to life these lives that would have never been able to find their way into our lives, and the amazing impact that their truths reflect on our truths is what we espouse at The Giving Spirit. So how did you both, just, with all the causes that are out there, why homelessness and why today?
You want to dive in?
Sure. Well, first of all, Tom, thank you. It's an honor to be speaking with you. Thank you for your work and for everything, the warrior that you are. And I think for John and I, John is an extraordinary filmmaker. I'm from Brazil, John's from San Francisco. He's been all over the world filming, and I've been also, grew up in Brazil and here, and we began talking. We became close friends and collaborators, and through the years, we began talking about how we're seeing more and more of our neighbors that are unhoused, that are experiencing homelessness, and we feel that there was this wall. Us, along with Bonnie Cohen, the producer, and in many ways one of our co-parents and originators of this project, began talking about how we felt that there's this invisible walls that kind of divide, that we've been ignoring too much, and we wanted to actually look at our own cities, our own neighbors, and talk to them and find out that there's stories behind it. Because, as you said, the dialogue behind it is so demeaning and dehumanizing, and we wanted just to pierce through that and actually change perspective and look at our lives from a perspective that we've been marginalizing for so long, in order to bring a connection back and sort of try to bring the human connection back, because we're sorely missing that in the current discourse that we find ourselves in.
What I think the common bond that the three of us share is, and what your film so powerfully depicted, was making homelessness relatable. I think that's exactly what you just articulated, Pedro. And so, John, when you were selecting the stories, when you were putting together and weaving the mosaic of your beautiful film, how did you go about, finding these people? And you had 3 cities, right, to pick from.
Oh my gosh. Well, there are, I don't know, you probably know better than we do. I think the estimate is now 600,000 plus Americans sleeping on the streets every night without a place to call home. This has been a crisis that's been developing over the course of decades. It seemed from our research that really started to take shape in the Reagan administration in the early 80s, and it's just now getting to a point of absolutely humanitarian crisis. So one of the kind of effects of that ongoing crisis is now there is an army of people out there like yourself who spend their lives trying to pick up the pieces of this crisis. social workers, caseworkers, organizations. The film owes itself completely to the organizations in Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles that do the good work on the streets every day of checking in on these communities. Having to make the hard decisions of like, who needs help in the most desperate way to get into emergency housing and that kind of thing. And so when we first started, we put ourselves in the hands of those folks who are like yourself, who are out there and who know these communities. And we learned a huge amount. We learned that homelessness is really kind of a misnomer. It's what you realize is when you go into these encampments is they're communities. There are people who are living their lives out there. They happen to not have a door that they can lock at night, but they have a bedroom. It might be a tent. It might be a box. It might be some kind of tiny house. They have a kitchen. It might be a faucet on the side of the building. They have a living room. It might be a park bench. We were in a community in Berkeley, California, where a government had formed in a community. Wow. I mean, it makes sense, right? They're just human beings trying to get by and trying to be safe and have food and have stuff that they can have a baseline in life so they can go out and work and make a life for themselves. And so that's how it started, was with the people who really knew it way better than we did.
One of the things that I've had to deal with is this annoying question or even a statement saying, aren't you perpetuating a lifestyle? Aren't you actually giving them a Band-Aid to stay out there and fill in the blank? And I said, let me think. Yeah, I'm a single mom with a couple kids. I want to sleep on concrete. I want to, chase rats away from my kid's bed. I want to get on the bus. If I'm a college student going to UCLA, who's homeless, I want to sleep on the bus and sleep in the library so I can graduate. I mean, sure, I want to do all those things. And so when you have that conversation with someone who's quasi-rational, you see them kind of like saying, well, maybe that was a pretty stupid question to ask. And I think for us, and what you guys did so well is, it's this whole theme that's our overarching theme with the Giving Spirit, they're us. They see in your characters, your lives that you've brought out in the characters in your film, people they know in their lives, and that's what when we roll up on families or individuals, like I could have gone to school with that guy, he went to where? He got a double PhD from Berkeley, or she's a working mom that works, that has 2 jobs and those kids want to be doctors and lawyers. It's that. Why should they, like you said, John, why should they have to have a different set of goals and hopes and aspirations because they're poor?
Exactly. It's so funny. You see in the film, Ronnie Futuristic Willis, an extraordinary dancer. We filmed him right across the street from Dolby Theater. He is a classically trained dancer and choreographer. Has danced with Janet Jackson, has danced with Michael Jackson, has been on tour with incredible artists. But unfortunately fell on hard times and experienced homelessness for a while. He's back in more stable housing now. But that's the thing. What your shirt says, it's all of us. This is about all of us. And it's funny that you mentioned this. We throughout the film, we filmed these vulnerability assessments, which are these intake interviews that are done all across the country. It's kind of a very standardized questionnaire, but very basically assess each person's needs from their experience. And you know what? One of the most common answers, what do you need, is housing. Every single person, we did multiple, every single one of them, it's like us. We want a place, a dignified place to call our own.
It's so frightening to think about not having a home. I mean, think about it. I'm going to come and take your home away. There's not much that's more frightening than that. And I think, unfortunately, as Americans, I don't know if it's the media or our politicians or this kind of like creating sort of an us versus them kind of thing that maybe helps the people at the top somehow. But that fear is so frightening that we are now afraid of this. And we're so afraid of it that we've otherized the people that it's happening to. even though when you actually, as you know, it seems silly to say it to you because you spend your life doing this, but for Pedro and I, it was a new thing. I hadn't introduced myself to somebody experiencing homelessness very often in my life. But when you do it, you realize, oh, right, we have way more in common than we don't have in common. And so you see people like Flora, who works a double shift at a hospital, in cleaning and janitorial, and then she walks down the street and sleeps in a shelter with 160 people in it. That is a system, right? That's not Flora's fault that she doesn't have a home of her own. There is a system. When you're making minimum wage in LA County and you can't afford even a room in an apartment, it's time to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what kind of society do we want to have?
And the average cost price of a 2-bedroom apartment in LA, average, $2,600. Wow. The medium house cost is right at $1 million. So, I mean, it's imagine if you are a single mom with kids and you want to get them at home and you're working, right? Your credit, you can only imagine what her credit is probably at this point, right? So she can't, when she's filling out her application, she's really sweating because she knows once they get to a credit report that's going to get slaughtered. So she already has that going against her. And then so the landlord is going to say, I need first and last month rent. And so she has to come up with, let's say, $4,000 in cash to be able to get that apartment. And a lot of times these landlords are saying, you need to be at this place at 3:00, and she's got a double shift, to pick up the kids from school, making sure they're safe. If she misses that appointment, somebody else gets the apartment. She starts all over again. Yeah. And so it's housing, end of the day, permanent supportive housing is where homelessness ends. But there's a long spectrum before, of care and of needs that have to be addressed before they can get there. We say that we own the first mile. So, because we go out to outreach when they're in their most desperate situations to learn about who their lives are, and so we can learn for ourselves to be able to create a better narrative around their situation for our volunteers especially. But we want to create a leg up on hope for them, because it's not just an education for our people, it's them saying, you know what, who are you, why are you here? I mean, we thought humanity gave up on us, so so they're more afraid of us than we are of them. And so to get them to believe that we're on their side and we came from all over the country to hang out with them on a Sunday afternoon is an incredible learning experience for them. And so we can, there's great stories that we can share. If you go on our site, you can see film that's been done on people that we didn't know. They're we don't put GPSs on our kits. We just go with God. We don't know what happens to them, but we've had 3 different people find us in various ways that attribute us to saving their lives because we gave them hope. And that's what I saw in the eyes of your incredible lives that you featured. Can you share with us some updates on some of these wonderful people? Because I'm sure the audience would love to know.
Absolutely.
Sure. For example, the single mom who you see in the film is pregnant. She's thankfully in housing, in an apartment, and working actually for an organization that helps families that are experiencing homelessness. Ronnie Futuristic Willis, he's in an apartment, as is Flora now, recently, and Roro, who is Rashima White, extraordinary woman who is with one of Lewis's best friends. Lewis is the guy who you see in the very beginning of the film, and he's the one we track the most. He's in Oakland, and so is Roro. And Roro is in stable housing, working for an organization in the Bay Area. I'm blanking on the name, but she is actually now working to help Lewis get into stable housing. He's in they call it a tough shed. It's kind of like a tiny home, a little community in Oakland. And Roro was trying to help him, trying to get into an apartment of his own. And that's what we see a lot, is actually so much so many people that have experienced this come back and actually want to give back and help. Yes. And another example is Eric, who you see helping Patty out. Patty, who is the young woman in the encampment here in Los Angeles, in the basin. Yeah. In the basin.
Abusive boyfriend, Mike, right?
Yeah, exactly. And she is still she's in the shelter, in the emergency shelter with provided by LA Family Housing. And Eric is still very much in touch with her. And Eric actually has a fascinating story, because he, as a young man, came from a broken home and went out into the streets as a teenager and experienced homelessness for many years, but actually was eventually hired by LA Family Housing in the early 2000s and is still with the organization. And he's he's giving back, and he's one of the most extraordinary human beings we've ever met. And connects with anyone on a really deep and wonderful level. So
that's so great. It's awesome to hear. Yeah. It really is. Nothing warms our hearts. I mean, to know that they have a roof over their heads. One gift was it Lulu, the dog, Luis's dog? Is that her name? Luna. Yeah. So I know that God rest her soul, that she's passed, and I know that again, the young lady that Eric helped again. What's her? Patty. Both of them had dogs. Yeah, that's right. And so one of the things that we have really focused on in our work is companion animals. Mm-hmm. The plight of companion animals, and serving them, bubbles up to serve the human, right? It's all about the human at the end. Yeah. But what it does for us is that it makes homelessness much more accessible and consumable to people who are, being forced to opposite corners. If you talk about how the animal keeps the human alive and vice versa, and then you're actually, saving two lives at the same time. I mean, it was so powerfully impacting. That last scene of him holding her, I mean, that was the best way to end that film in so many ways. But it was, again, if you're sitting at home petting your dog, you're saying, oh my gosh, if that's, what would I do?
Yeah. Exactly. I know Luna, it's funny, we were like, Luna doesn't watch the news. She doesn't have she's not programmed to be suspicious of this person who happens to be sleeping out on the streets. She's just loyal to her owner, just like any dog would be, right? She wants to protect Lewis. She wants to love him. It's a beautiful relationship, and same with Patty and her dog. And it's a reminder, and it's those kind of human details that you just instantly, when you sort of like tear down the wall of invisibility, as Pedro beautifully puts it, you just see like, oh, that's just one of a million things that we have in common. Our animals love us, we love them, they protect us. In Patty's case, a survivor of domestic assault, this is the case for a lot of women, right? They have big, strong dogs, and it's awesome. These dogs protect them and their companions, and emotional and physical protection.
I think, again, one of the things that we've discussed together as warriors is we call it, living their lives inside out. And I think there's two stories that come to mind that you told. One was Patty and domestic violence. And so that, again, it's that if the Jolly Green Giant came down and took the rooftops off of people's houses in the best neighborhoods in any city in the United States or around the world, and saw what was going on in there, is the same stuff that's going on our street corners, right? Mental health, domestic violence, substance abuse, all those things are happening to all of us, the housed folks. But we don't see somebody yelling at the top of their lungs, half naked, because that person has, infrastructure, family, church, synagogues, college buddies, whatever, and money, resources to get the help they need. We're seeing society inside out, and this is where they live because they can't afford to live anywhere else. So that story, domestic violence, and then the other one, which was to me the one that brought me to tears, and also brought the intake volunteer that day when she had the woman with the two kids. Her story. If that story happens in Eastern Europe, we're in Ukraine right now. There's this huge fear of Ukrainian women being raped by Russian soldiers. The whole world, gets up in an outrage. Of this. How can this woman be raped and she's now pregnant? I mean, that's happening now. And do you think that the sympathy towards that woman, as a woman of color that people see with 2 kids? I mean, there's this skewed value of human life that you both experienced, front and center, that must have really hit you between the eyes. It did me, we're 22 years into this, and it still hits me of how hypocritical we are as human beings. So, I mean, I'd love to hear your, how.
Absolutely, Tom. It's amazing to hear your perspective, and it's so true, that the people that we see on the streets and we sort of otherize and we sort of victim blame them as a society, that is us. We are doing the exact same things. Many of us are drinking too much every once in a while and going a little crazy, or we have our moments, but we're doing it inside the privacy of our bedrooms and our homes. And I think one thing we realized making this film, and I hope it comes across in the film, is that 500,000, 600,000, maybe that's an undercount way undercounted. Maybe it's 1 million or more people. Yeah. Okay. That seems like a problem. It is a problem. It's a crisis of humanity. It's also an opportunity. We have 1 million people out there that could be helped into housing, and our economy could be that much stronger. Our creative out could be that much more. We could have that much more art, that much more business, that much more, healthy families. It's just, that's what I think at the end of the day, when Pedro and I were filming with Tiffany, the mom that you see, with Roman and Ravel, the young couple that falls in love and get pregnant in the film, it was just human beings living their lives, but with all these kind of weights on them, right?
Yeah.
And if we could just help them lift the weights, then we all would have more freedom. That's the irony here, is that we have an opportunity as Americans right now, and I hope that it feels like there's sort of, the film, even though it's tough, it has this kind of hope to it, almost like an inspiring feeling that you're seeing this sort of swath of humanity. And I think that's what it is for Pedro and me, is that it felt like an opportunity that's kind of being missed right now by, I don't know, the economic structure that we've created for ourselves.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's an untapped potential. We filmed inside this young woman's tent in Skid Row, and she had one of the best senses of style. She should be on set, being either a costume designer or a set decorator. Her tent was impeccable, and it was so organized. It had the most wonderful, and we were in her home.
Yes.
She invited us into her home,
Totally.
and we had a wonderful.
When we left that tent,
Yes.
we felt like we had just been to like the same feeling that you would have if you had been to a great dinner party of a new friend.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. Oh my God, we were in her bedroom. We saw her makeup counter. We saw the shelves where she kept her stuff. It was just, it's hard to describe the sense of kind of love and human compassion that arises immediately when you break down the walls and you're basically just getting to know a neighbor for the first time.
Exactly.
And it plays to what you were talking about this community that was built, and how I think for me, some of those touching moments for our volunteers. So we have over 21,000 volunteers over the last 99 years. It feels like 99 sometimes. The last 22 years and to see them when they walk up on and seeing these people sweeping and meticulously cleaning and keeping their areas free of debris and how well heeled their pets are, and the sense of community they create in terms of protecting each other. Because there are more homeless children on the street than ever before, more homeless babies than ever before, and so social services is a heartbeat away. And so if you're a single mom trying to protect your children and not getting them taken away from you, now there's arguments on both sides, right? But what I've seen is more stories like Tiffany, where these mothers will in every shape and form, will give those kids the greatest opportunity to succeed. And let me give you a great statistic, because we also have a program that we inaugurated with LA Unified School Districts a couple years ago, and working with those tireless workers that work with those kids every day. Do you know that there are over 20,000 children that attend LAUSD schools that are homeless, that self-identify as homeless? That's self-identify. So they told us, up front, said, Tom, no, it's more like 30 to 40% higher than that. Because the last thing you're going to do if you're a kid and you're already getting, razzed and dissed about stuff, right, for these same people to now know that you don't have a house to live in, and you study, on the street, and where do you plug in your phone, right? And so that is an enormous number of children who are attending our public school system here in Los Angeles. But here's the hope and here's the beauty of that. Of those children, 70% of them graduate from high school. 70% of them, through all of the challenges that they face, food security period, broken households, who knows what kind of abuse is happening all around them. They're vulnerable to predators of all shapes and sizes, right? They made it through. Guess what the delta between them and those that are housed? 16%. 86% of the sheltered kids graduate from high school, 70%. So that goes back to your potential. These kids, we call it learning their way out of poverty. They don't want to go back there. And they know if they get that freaking diploma and they have 50% of those kids go to community college or colleges. I mean, this is right. This is the runway of the American dream. Why should they not have access to that? And why should we do whatever we can at the insertion points of their lives when the system fails them, jump in and double down to make sure they get to graduation? Because I'm a capitalist, right? I want them paying taxes. They want to work. Let's find them jobs so they can go buy products from for consumer products companies that want to sell products to them. I mean, so the staunchest capitalists, when you have this argument with them, it's like, where are you going to put your money? Do you want them to be on the dole, as you say, for extended periods of time, or do you want to invest in these kids now?
In 1929, when the stock market crashed, that and other forces led to the Great Depression that all of us Americans learn about in middle school, in high school. Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of Americans, I think I read a statistic the other day that 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 Americans was immediately out of work within a period of months. When we learn about that, we don't blame those people, right? We learned actually the opposite. Right. The country rallied around, figured out how to help these people, tweak our system, put the programs in place so that we could get back to the capitalism working correctly. What we have right now is a lot of exciting capitalism in this country, and Lord knows it's exciting to be alive right now with all the creative tech that's going on. But we have a problem with the system too, in that 1 million or so people are falling out of the bottom of it. And the reality is it's not that much of a tweak that we need to make to just kind of change the rules a little bit so it's not so unfair, so that if you don't happen to have parents or grandparents or relatives that can help you when a medical problem happens, or when you lose a job unexpectedly, we need some kind of system that keeps this from happening so that we don't see the inside out on the streets, right? We need to tweak the system so that it works for not just the people who are experiencing homelessness, but for those of us who are also vulnerable to it.
Yeah.
It's that simple, I think. I mean, I know it's more complex than that in practice, but that's, as observers making this film, that was just so apparent to us.
Was there some moments when you were filming that really just shocked you? I mean, was there any one or two moments which you said that can't be true, or this is not happening and that shouldn't be happening, or was there a cumulative effect? I mean, was there any single,
Oh my God. Well, Skid Row in LA, I had really never spent time there, but it's shocking. I mean, it's a refuge. It's basically, they call it Skid Row in LA, downtown LA. It's a refugee camp. I think it's probably America's largest refugee camp. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but it is truly shocking what is going on there. And basically what it is, it's the county has pushed all these people well, not all of them, but many of the people who experience homelessness into this one little corner of downtown LA, and they've tried to make a community there.
Yeah. And I think that's, and John just said that the key word there, community. And I think that one of the things that we saw that maybe was more surprising was like that community in Berkeley that we went to, and was, had formed a little government and had very sensible, sort of rules and like way to go about to govern themselves. And I think it's that we are all really the same. That we need a place to nest. We need human connection. We see Lewis, falling in love with Zia, and it was. I think there are so many. I think for me, it was the diversity of experiences and all the different walks of life that we got to know people from every single background, from every walk of life, and for unfortunate, very varied reasons, they were unfortunately pushed out onto the streets. And I think for us, it was that sort of diversity of experiences was really sort of shocking, and sort of like made us realize how thin that line is. Eric says in the film, "I'm one paycheck away."
Absolutely.
And there are too many Americans that are right on that line. If you get into a car crash or medical emergency, families whose kids come down with a medical issue are forced to choose between paying for the medical care of the child or paying rent or something. There are too many Americans that are facing choices like that, and there's nothing catching underneath. There's nothing there at the bottom to try to help out, or any kind of net. So many times, when there is, it's very daunting to navigate. Just trying to. I would be completely overwhelmed and not know where to go or what to do if I needed. If I was pushed out into the streets, and how to find a place of my own. Seeing Lewis trying to navigate a bureaucracy that is a lot of times very opaque was also very daunting. And that's one of the things that I wouldn't know what to do. I would freak out. I would. So I think that's what for us I think was the most powerful of like education that we got.
40% of Americans, if in fact they were faced with a $400 blip in their monthly expenses, would find themselves in dire situations within 60 days homeless.
Yeah.
40% of our economy.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
That plays to Eric's story. As you can imagine, 22 years of serving and being with our friends on the streets, there's a million stories go through my head and examples. And one of them is we had a dear friend and volunteer of ours. He is a real estate guy, and he was showing some foreign investors. They wanted to open a bunch of franchises from Turkey. So they came in here to LA and they did site visits throughout the day. They sat down and had dinner at the end of the day, and so the talking about what they saw, and so the Turkish investor leans into my friend and say, "Gosh, it's amazing. You have no stray dogs in this city." And he goes, "Yeah, we're he's thinking all proud about LA is really we're really rescue friendly, and we're very compassionate about housing all these animals, and so that they're not euthanized, and so he talked about don't kill LA and all those great programming." He goes, "Yeah, that's amazing, because in Turkey, the dogs are crazy. They're running through the streets everywhere." And then he leans further into it, "But you know what? We don't have stray people. Why do you have so many stray people here?" And he couldn't. He was stopped in his tracks. And he said, "You're right. I guess maybe we have things a little backwards." So, when foreigners come here and they go, you talk about this great civilization, but you're allowing your people to live on a street corner. We would never think of that being appropriate in our countries. It's again, we have this struggle about this rugged individualism and the American will, and we've been trying what you did in your film, which is again, it's why we are so symbiotic in all of this. Is that I've told all my people, and I've told our the media, and when I speak, it's that we're creating stories of resilience and heroism. For them to overcome what they've had to overcome, I don't know if I could have. I don't know if I could sit and go through what they've had to go through to survive. And so I consider them, the people that you profiled, heroes, because if they have been denied and pushed aside and told no, and like you said, Luis going through the system, it's like, it drives you crazy as somebody like we're standing in their way, and we're still stereotyping them and marginalizing them and using them now. And the mayoral race in Los Angeles is polarized, and it's focused on one specific issue, and that's the folks that live on our streets. And it's interesting to see how the candidates are positioning themselves, but it's a shame, and it makes me feel, I'm pretty sad that we as a nation have to use these people who are so vulnerable, as a political tool, to separate to separate neighborhoods. And look, I have a lot of great friends, and who have struggle with this issue every day, who love what we're doing, but and I don't blame them. I mean, there's a lot to what they're saying, but I always and what you guys have done such a good job of doing is you've got us to sit down and take the time to learn, and that's the number one word that I use when people say what's going to solve this issue. I said time. We have to get off of our we need to get over ourselves and sit down and listen to these people's stories and understand where we failed them, and if they made a bad decision, okay, they won't be able to recover from it like we could. So how do we then get them back into a place where they can be, on a much better runway for them to, join us, on this side of the fence. And so
absolutely, that's why we felt so strongly about. Once we heard that first interview, that vulnerability assessment in Seattle, it was, going back to your previous question, it was a groundbreaking moment for John and I, because we got in the window into, someone's story. And, people ask, well, are you talking to the experts? Yes, we are talking to the experts. We're talking to the people, and to hear what they, like, when you want to overcome some obstacle in your life, you ask, what do you want? What do you need, right? No one seems to be in this whole, debate over solutions, or no one seems to be asking the people experiencing homelessness themselves, like, what do you need? How can we help you? It's the humanity has been forgotten. And that's what we wanted to do, is kind of like grounded back into that, in the simple humanity, and hear from the people, from our brothers and sisters, from our neighbors, like how, what their experiences were, and what do they want, what they need to overcome the obstacles, that all of us have obstacles. And it's basically that, trying to reframe that, shift that perspective, because we've lost that way.
So people are going to watch this film, they can come away moved. Others are going to want to act. Mm-hmm. Okay, obviously, join us at the Giving Spirit. We can put you to work, and we can also teach you. But what's your main takeaway? What do you want people, children, families, educators? What do you want them to take away from your film? What's the most important takeaway in your film?
It seems like, first of all, this is a crisis. All hands on deck, right? Tom, you do what you can. You have certain skills. You have an organization that goes out there and does these amazing kits that allows people to survive out there. Pedro and I are filmmakers, so the thing that we felt like we could do with Lead Me Home was open people's hearts. That's what film does, right? We just came from the Academy luncheon because we were fortunate enough to have this film nominated for an Oscar this year, and so we got to spend the afternoon with all these amazing artists. Basically what the film community does is it makes stories and tries to teach through the heart. And we hope that the film, first and foremost, can do that. People can watch this and just kind of remember for a moment, like, oh, right, those people in the film, those are human beings. I identify with those. And then once their heart is open, hopefully, if they're interested, they can start to get the tools to learn more about it. We have an amazing website, leadmehomefilm.com, where we've done school curriculum. High school teachers can download curriculum and figure out a way for it to connect to whatever subject they're teaching in class. Community discussion guides, resources to get in touch with organizations like yours to get involved in their communities, to do volunteer work, political work. There's so many different ways that you can get involved in the solution. People say, what are the solution? The solution is actually, unfortunately, a lot of different things. A lot of people coming together, basically us as Americans coming together and deciding we're not going to stand for this anymore, right? We're not going to, if we hear somebody trying to divide us, like talk about, oh, those homeless people, they're drug addicts and they're mentally ill. When you hear that language, your antenna needs to go up and you need to realize, like, somebody has an agenda. They're trying to otherize them, trying to drive a wedge between Americans for some other gain, right? Forget about that. Let's hopefully use this film and other stories and the work you do to remind ourselves as Americans that at the end of the day, we're all working on the same thing. We all want to have a community that we're proud of. We all want our cities to be as beautifully as they possibly can be. So hopefully in a small way, the film is opening hearts. That's really the first step.
It's an invitation. It really is, and we want to, and hence the 40-minute runtime, or the 39:25 runtime leaves enough room for people to begin a conversation, to engage, and to really kind of think about how they want to engage. And the website is there. You can also find out the updates on the people that you get to meet in the film. But it really is, I think, an invitation and a question for all of us.
It's powerful. We've been doing this again for 22 years, and for us, we just went over the 80,000 lives served. We've taken care of over 80,000 people since '99, directly with our aid, and what we have seen over 22 years is the demographic has changed and the locations have changed. The demographic skewed more to the lower, the very lowest social economic classes and a very an impoverished, that's been impoverished for decades. That has now spread into mainstream. So there are more folks that look like you guys that we see on the street. A lot more women, a lot more children, a lot more homeless youth. It's really moved into mainstream. So I talk about there's a doppelganger, in this world walking around that looks like you and went to school like you did and has a family like me, and that is looking for a place to sleep right now. I mean, it's gotten that way. And one of the stories I would love to tell, and we've been formulating in our ideas, and maybe we can collaborate on this, is the journey of the American refugee. Because if you look at the profile on Doctors Without Borders of what causes someone to flee around the world, their home, with their family, what's going on right now, and in living color in the Ukraine, and then you look at what causes a homeless person to flee. If you switch a few words here and there, it's the same profile. And so that goes back to the headbanging. For me, it's like, okay, we'll spring into action if it's in Africa, less, but if it's in Western Europe, faster, right? And so here we are, people that are literally right out that window, right? That could use that same kind of love and attention that we as a world could do, and we let them just continue. Not only do we let them continue in that state of lifestyle, but we then condemn them, and then we try to ship them out or move them away, and it's just. But we have to stay vigilant. And I just want to thank you both for joining this. I mean, it's like when I started it, I had 4 volunteers and an idea to help one person. We're over 80,000 and 20,000 volunteers. So the two of you being able now to take that and make it consumable to millions now is I'm proud to be a part of this with you and watch you from afar. But now being able to shake your hands. Thank you so much for being, just, part of the answer, because the solution is exactly what you said, Pedro. You invite people to spend the time and learn alongside with us. Especially bring your kids. The kids are the best. The kids are teaching their parents more about poverty and about making right decisions. And we started a whole youth council at the Giving Spirit to really mine and take the minds and hearts and souls of the future leaders and impact our policy in the way that we tell our stories and the way we engage our people, because we know that they get it a lot better and a lot easier than we do. And so, sit your kid in front of this film. I mean, they need to see this film. They need to see these human beings. I loved how you had a cross-section of our nation, so people can see, color, gender, sexual orientation. They can see it all, and it was beautiful. So, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Tom. It's
awesome.
been an honor to talk to you.
And we just begun this together, guys. We're on this journey now for a while.
Definitely.
Right
So
on.
I look forward to having you on our side.
Yeah, no, this is
Right
an
on.
honor, and it's, we need lots more.
Yeah.
And we want to thank Netflix. I mean, for making this happen. I mean, this is
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Netflix has been an amazing partner, and we're not allowed to reveal the numbers, but it's amazing how many people in this country and all around the world have seen this film. So yeah, thank you to our executives at Netflix.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So who's gonna win? It's up to you. It's up to you guys watching. These guys need to win.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you so
Tom.
much.
Thank you.
It's been a
Thank you, guys.
pleasure.